Good boy, Tucker.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Work smarter where you want.
Consistency is key.
And remember, if it's not in Redtail, it never happened.
This is learning at its most fun.
Thank you all again for joining us this early morning if you're on the West Coast, your lunchtime if you're on the East Coast. Again, thank you for hopping on. But we did want to start off with a little bit easier of a concept, and that's, of course, controlling our calendar. Now, this is one topic I feel like we all use it, but we don't talk about it. It's just one of those kind of, well, it's there concepts. But today we're going to talk about specifically preferences and actions and kind of the misconception that goes into both of those. We're going to talk about how we can kind of customize the calendar to our benefit with some color coordinations and types. And then we're going to briefly talk about some syncing options. Now, I do want to point out that Haley and Curtis did just do a really in-depth thinking or a syncing webinar back in, was it June, July? A couple months ago. We'll go with that, a couple months ago. So if you are, kind of intrigued with some of those things we present today, I do recommend actually hopping onto that webinar to get that more in depth, because obviously we will not be able to cover everything in a very short amount of time. And then we will wrap it up with some tips and tricks just to see if there's anything that you might not already be using that could, again, just make your life a little bit easier. Now, again, starting off, we're going to start off with that preferences versus actions. So what this really is it's just, again, a way to set up your calendar. So that way, those things that we like having as our default are actually there as our default. So what exactly is the difference between these two? Preferences, these are actually like saved default choices. Think permanent. If I permanently want to see my weekends, I want to be able to see my completed activities. I want us to show our workflow tasks. I don't want to have to log in and change that every day. That's where you're going to want to come in with preferences. Now, actions, kind of the opposite. Those are actually more of a temporary view. Maybe for just this 5 seconds, I want to see my workflow tasks or my client birthdays. But again, I don't want to see that every single waking minute of every day. That's, again, those actions versus preferences.
So you're going to change your preferences. No, you're good. You're going to change your preferences as you change your mind or change the way that you utilize the system. I change my preferences once a quarter, maybe, on average, but you're going to toggle those actions.
Yep, you got it. So again, I do want to point this out because they actually don't reside in the same location. And sometimes we might actually just completely gloss over that one of these is an option. So I do want to hop into the database really quick just to show where both of these are located. Should you sit there and go, I haven't touched my preferences since I first started with Redtail 7 years ago, or whatever the case might be. But if you do click on your name in the top right and then come on down to preferences right below that, again, this is where you can really control how you want it to show when you first log in. So we did break it down for calendar management. Again, this is entirely up to you. So just because I have mine set up one way doesn't mean that you can't set it up differently. We'll definitely show that as an example. Haley and I use our calendars quite differently, actually. We think a lot alike, but calendar approach is not one of them that we are similar on. And again, that's okay. This is more of a user decision. Now, again, preferences is your name in the top right, and then preferences right below that. But actions is actually under the calendar on the left. So when you click on calendar on the left, now at the top, we have our actions. So right here, again, these are those temporary views. So if I want to hide those workflow tasks, all of those black little lines we saw there went away. Now, one thing to keep in mind when it comes to actions, again, this is that temporary concept. If I go off that page, then come back, it's going to default back to those preferences. So there's all of those workflow tasks again, anything that we have again that we might have turned off. So that's why I always call it that temporary. If you just want it for a second, just need to see it just so it's, again, maybe easier, you have that ability.
So we had a question come in, Catherine, from Shanna. Sometimes I set my actions to see completed activities, and after I change it back to not see them, basically they're still showing. So the difference between preferences and actions is that preferences are stored on Redtail's server. So every time you log in for the day or every time the page reloads, it defaults back to your preferences, your own user preferences. If you toggle an action and that action is toggled back or is not sticking, that's because those are saved in the browser cookies. So let me break that down. The browser may be Google Chrome, Safari, Firefox, or Internet Explorer, whatever you're using to log in and access Redtail. And Catherine's pointing out there's usually an icon in the top right-hand corner where you can go to settings in that browser, clear the cache and the cookies, and that's why that action is not resetting itself, because sometimes that cache and cookies fill up and within the browser, and we just need to clear that out, and then the actions can toggle again.
Exactly. So I'm glad you actually pointed that out, because you're right. We definitely might have some outside forces that play against us. So definitely do a little troubleshooting at times. If it's not actions, it's preferences. If it's not preferences, it might be that. If again, you're still running into a situation where it should be sticking, it's not, you've cleared out that cache and cookies, that might be time where it is a best choice to give support a call and say, hey, I don't know what's going on. They can definitely help you out from there. All right, so now that we have, again, that really, really basic concept that, again, can drive at least getting everything established, I do want to move on towards, well, how can we really customize it? So this is where that whole color scheme comes in. I know it's a very basic topic, but it is the question I still get frequently whenever I do a training and I hop on and they have all of these colors and they sit there and go, wait, how did you make those changes? Despite the fact that we normally establish preferences as being that permanent, your color scheme is actually under that action. So I know it sounds a little bit weird that we have that under that temporary, but it is there for you to easily come into that actions. Change colors is at the top of that screen, and then you'll get a pop-up here. Now, one thing I like to point out, and I'll come back in when we talk about those tips and tricks, but every single color that we have in here, and I'll show you on the actual screen as well, they each have what's called an HTML color code. So yes, it is where it's very unique, but you could have this so that way, maybe I always want to set appointments as this particular color, but I want my client reviews as a specific type to come in with this particular color. And then I want holidays to show up as this color and workflow tasks to show up as that. Again, that's going to be entirely up to you. It is still user specific, but each color does have its own HTML color code, which again can come into play with the tips and trick we're going to lead up to, of course. One thing to keep in mind though, when it comes to these whole color schemes, it is based off of that activity type. So I know yesterday when we were talking about templates, we brought up this concept that types and categories are both customizable, and that is still true, but your calendar is actually driven off of the activity type itself. So if you've never updated that type category or that type list itself, and you only see those defaults, but you want to go in and add those, that is something that you're still going to have to go to that managed database list at the bottom and then update activity types. At that point, that's when you can really, again, customize the system.
I would recommend simplicity here with your colors. Thinks in simple terms. So typically I like to say your completed are all going to be the same color, except for maybe one or two that stand out, like canceled comes to mind for me, Catherine, right? Maybe having your canceled a different colors so those easily stand out and you can see which ones were canceled, or maybe your client reviews, when they're completed, have those a different color so you can easily just kind of eyeball how many occurred in a week or a month. And then with your open activities, think with simplicity here too. So for example, anything I need to do on my own time, whether it's a task, a to-do, a follow-up, or the different activity types that I have that are basically just an action I need to complete, but not me meeting with anyone, those are all the same color. And then any meetings, an appointment, a client meeting, a client review, a training in my case, those are all the same color as well. So I know if I see one color, I need to be somewhere, I need to be talking to someone, I need to be logged into a Zoom potentially, and then if I see another color, I know it's just something I need to get done through the course of the day.
Exactly. So again, that's just another option that's out there. Always hold what we say as like a grain of salt, because we again do it one way. You might find that, hey, a different way works better for you. So I actually did see kind of a question that popped in. I think it actually already disappeared on me, but can it come in where it's mostly actually like a user's perspective? So if you are maybe one of those who have that position where you actually do a lot of the calendar and booking of activities for several users in your database, where it's for appointments for advisor 1 and advisor 2 and advisor 3, and you want to easily to kind of just see on your own calendar what's what, you could do a type like what we have here where it's appointment for Austin, appointment for Daisy, appointment for Leo, and set these as different colors. So that way you can easily say, okay, looking at here, this one's like a lilac color. This one over here, we're going to set this as a kind of a purple. And then that way, again, it's still going to be more of a user in that perspective, but it's still based off of a type. Now, again, to get here, it is going to be under actions and then change colors. And then again, right over here. Now, again, to Haley's point, you might not come over to the completed and change every single one of these. That might be a little bit time consuming. But for those things that are really important, yes, you can definitely set those so that way you can see it and go, oh, it's grayed out. That means I did do it and that's perfect. That's what I needed to see.
And there was a concern that came in from Gregory in the questions that the colors were not permanent because they're under the actions menu. They are permanent. So not everything under the actions is temporary. Mostly we're talking about the hide all day events, hide completed, seminars, workflow tasks, birthdays, almost everything else on that menu there is temporary. The change colors at the very top, though, that is permanent. You don't have to do this every time you log in.
Yes, yeah, definitely. That would be a nightmare. We wouldn't wish that on anyone. So yes, change colors are permanent, but again, they are user specific. Now, one more thing that I do want to point out, just because I did see this question come in, and I will reiterate it again later, but this whole concept of if I complete my activities, which we should complete those activities. If I complete it on like the today page, it disappears from my calendar, but I want that to stay. If that's the case, that's where this whole show hide complete comes in. So that way, if you're actually like me, I like to see what's completed on my calendar. You can have it so that way it is a show completed. Now, again, if you are like me, I'd probably set that as a preference, because otherwise, if you set it under that action, you'd have to come over here and click it every single time.
So Brianna did just ask, can you set your calendar to permanently show completed? And you just answered that. Yes, there is a preference exactly for that.
Perfect. So glad to see we're all kind of on that same thought process of, yes, set up your preferences so that way you can see exactly what you want to see. But that does actually lead us into our next topic here, which is this really popular question of, can my Redtail calendar sync with other products out there? / how does it work? So Haley, if you don't mind, can you explain iCal in a kind of brief overview really quick?
Yeah, so iCal is the most simple sync we have available. And this is a one-directional, I'm sending the Redtail calendar to another internet calendar. iCal does not, in this case, mean iPhone or Apple. I know we were trained to think if it has an I before it, it's an Apple product. In this case, it was actually built by Google. It means internet calendar. So Yahoo, AOL, if you're still using those, Gmail, any of those email addresses or accounts that are online, then you can send your Redtail calendar to that internet calendar, Outlook as well, and then you can just view it there. You can add reminders at that point in time, but nothing that is edited goes back into Redtail. This is one way out of Redtail for your view and reference somewhere else.
Perfect. Now, Retriever for Tailwag, and I put it in desktop because that is a really key factor here. This one's a little different. This one you actually have a little bit of options because you can have this sync both directions, unlike iCal there. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this one is that this might not be really an option for everyone. So you do have to be a PC user for this, as well as you also have to have a desktop version of Outlook. If you don't have those two factors, really probably wouldn't recommend this one. It won't work for you correctly the way you think it would. But with this one, there's some really good positives that come out of this one. This one will sync to your default calendar that you have in your Outlook. The one thing that is a limitation here is that it does sync once daily, as well as there tends to be a confusion when it comes to task types. So in Redtail, we have that type of tasks. When you have that as an actual type for your activity in Redtail, it actually doesn't sync over to the calendar part in Outlook Desktop. It goes to a full-on separate section of tasks themselves. So we do occasionally get those questions of, where did all of this go? Panicking, thinking that they lost all this data, and it actually just went to somewhere else. So again, the key reminders with this one is that you have to be a PC user. So I'm sorry for any Mac users, this isn't for you. But again, this also does require that desktop. Now, couple other things to keep in mind. If you are going to use this one, we do recommend just setting it up with one computer to avoid any kind of duplicates. You do also have to have this on for it to sync as well. And then, Haley, do you want to wrap it up for Retriever Cloud here?
Yes. So of the three, this is the most versatile option. This is like it's named Retriever Cloud. It's in the cloud. It's syncing. It does not rely on you having a PC or a Mac or any certain type of computer, but it does rely on you having an Microsoft Exchange, Outlook 365, or Google account. So if your email account is hosted by Outlook 365, which it may be through your broker dealer, so if you know that your broker dealer hosts your email, that would be a question to ask them if they're hosting it through Microsoft Exchange or Outlook 365. And if they are, you may be able to use Retriever Cloud to sync your calendar both ways between Redtail and your email account. So anywhere your email account is added on your phone, your other devices, then you'll be able to access the Redtail calendar, and it syncs both ways. And that goes for the Google account as well. So if you don't have an Outlook 365, Microsoft Exchange, or Google email account, that's where you would use the Retriever for Tailwag if you have a PC, or if you don't have any of those, that's where you might use the iCalendar. And all of this is just if you want to be able to sync that Redtail calendar to view it actually on another calendar. We do also have a Redtail mobile app, so you can log in directly on other devices to view the Redtail calendar directly, add, edit, delete, all of that fun stuff.
Exactly. Now, one other thing also to keep in mind, yes, these are all options for you to sync with your calendar, but we still always recommend you go to Redtail first. And usually that comes into the fact of linking in those contacts themselves. I know that was one thing I forgot to mention with Retriever for Tailwag, is that if you were to add it to the Outlook side and you're trying to have it come back over, it won't automatically link to those contacts. So you're still having to go in and kind of do a little bit double work, versus if you start with the Redtail CRM side first, you can link it up and then it'll go over. Now, we did see the question here, and I'll definitely let Haley answer this as well, but should you look at all three of these options and you're still not seeing a solution to what you're looking for, that might be where an integration can come into play. So I know there was a question in there, I think you actually grabbed it, for like Calendly and Schedule ones. If again, any of these three don't work, that is where I'd look into an integration, maybe like Zapier, and see if we can get it so that way it does actually communicate.
Yeah, we when Curtis and I did the webinar on this a couple weeks or months ago now, it is all posted if you'd like to watch it. But honestly, the biggest recommendation we made is calling into our support team and talking through your options, because, and I think I mentioned it yesterday, we compare this to how you like your ice cream. You know, there may be certain limitations. I'm lactose intolerant, so I really should not be eating typical ice cream. I'm going to go for a sorbet, for example, right? So if your email account is hosted by a certain company that limits your syncing abilities, then we'll be able to find another option that works right for your office. And just to reiterate what Catherine said, yes, if you're looking to use one of those calendar scheduling programs, Calendly, Acuity, Time Trade, Schedule Once, I know they're really big right now with us working from home. We don't have any direct integrations with them at this time, but you can sync most of them with Outlook and then use Retriever for Tailwag, Retriever Cloud, or like Catherine said, Zapier. So there's a lot of different options to sync those calendars back and forth with Redtail as well.
Exactly. Now, again, definitely weigh your options, exactly what Haley and Curtis definitely said in that webinar before. Find what works for you. There's not really a, hey, just because I do it this way doesn't mean you have to. Again, find the right fit for you. But I do want to switch gears a little bit and actually talk about kind of some tips and tricks that we use for our own kind of calendar management. So again, Haley and I, we are very, very similar at like our work ethics, but our calendar approach is vastly different. The things that I find valuable, she's like, oh God, no, please don't. In the reverse, I do the same thing where I'm like, you do what? And we just sit there and it's perfectly fine. So this first one, Haley, if you want to go ahead and explain this one, because I know this one's yours.
I know every time this one makes Catherine go, what, you do what?
Yep.
So first of all, viewing your weekends in the Redtail calendar is an option. You can choose to only see the work week, so Monday through Friday, or say you only work certain days, you can see Monday through Thursday or whatever it is. I choose to see all days, Sunday through Saturday, and you can also choose what day your week starts on. So I know a lot of times there will be a preference to start your week on a Monday, and you can do that too. Now, I use my weekends as storage buckets. And what I mean by that is I have a lot of tasks on my calendar. And if you're an admin or client services rep or any of those roles, you're probably tuning in a lot right here. If you've got a lot of tasks, I use my weekends to prioritize my tasks. If I have to get it done this week, I put it on Sunday. If it can roll to next week, I'm going to put it on Saturday. And then if it absolutely has to be done on a certain day, that is the only time that it is actually on a certain day. So if I had to make that call on Thursday, that's why that call is on Thursday. That's the day I'm supposed to make that phone call. But if that call could have been made any day, then I would have stored it on Sunday and just completed it as I had time throughout the week. So I'm very particular about how I use the calendar. And I know I get questions all the time. Haley, did you work on Saturday or Sunday? And I go, no, I store my activities there.
Perfect. So again, that is an option. I have my calendars turned off or my weekends turned off. So that way I don't even see it. My week is literally Monday through Friday. And any task that I know I'm not going to get through on Friday, I roll it over to Monday. Again, that's just the difference that we have here. Now, the next one here is actually where Haley cringes, and it's all that I really like. And that's actually showing that completed. So I know we've had this question already pop up before. Can I still show those items that I've completed? And the answer is definitely yes. So if you're like me, where come Friday, I don't remember every single thing that happened on Monday. I need to see that on my calendar. Set your preferences to show that show those completed activities. Again, if it's important enough, set those as different colors. To Haley's point, I do actually have, I think my actual 101 trainings are a different color than like my tasks. But again, that's just my own preference. But show those completed if it's important enough for you.
And my completed are gray, my favorite color. So when I do show them, I see the whole calendar in one shade and it's really nice. And then if I want something to stand out, then it's a darker gray or a lighter gray for completed. And I don't think we mentioned it, Catherine, but you can also set the color to white if you'd like to. So just because, sometimes there can be a lot of stimulation from all of the colors on the calendar. And if something's low priority, like client birthdays or anniversaries, and you want them to show, but you don't want them to be like neon, you can make them white and they still display, but it's just less clutter and less stimulation on the calendar.
Exactly. So actually, we just had a question that popped in from Emmy here, and it says, is administrator able to change heading tasks for individuals? So as far as like the actual types of activities, that is admin controlled. Now, as far as like how you have your subjects put in, how you have it actually displayed. So like right here, we have meeting with Rachel, client review, call Bruce. Those are the actual subject of the activities, which are entirely up to how you yourself set them up. But if you are referencing those types specifically, yes, that is an admin function that would have to be updated on that back portion.
I will say your section yesterday, Catherine, was all about templates, right? Mm-hmm. And templates are a great way to set a standard for that subject. So client review with Joey on Monday, that one may have been a template that was used. So every time we apply a client review, we can consistently see that subject. If you're not utilizing a template or you're adding an activity without a template, that's where you may see not proper capitalization, misspelled words, or inconsistent subjects in general.
Exactly. So definitely, yes, I will put that shameless plug in there. I'm very glad for those templates because this really will help, again, keep that consistency in that organization. So again, this one's actually reiterating, again, what we said earlier. Show only what you want to see. Just because you have your preferences set up one way doesn't mean that you can't change your mind in a spur of a moment where, yes, I want to see that. I do this all the time where I really set my preferences about every quarter as well. But there are times where I'm like, I just want to see what I have as far as like birthdays. And I want to see what's coming up in terms of, well, seminars aren't really a thing right now, but in terms of client reviews and things like that. I do, again, just have those moments where I'll pop into it. And that is just, again, just a reminder that you get to see and you get to control it. So I know for anyone out there who's like, I have to be in the driver's seat, this is your moment. Shine bright in this moment. But the next one here, and we actually had a question from Heidi here, comes up with this whole concept of a separate tab. So I know this was mentioned yesterday during the efficiency portion in the morning. Open up multiple tabs. And if you are, again, one that does a lot of bookings, you book for different advisors, you book for yourself, you might have the calendar open as a separate tab. So that way you can always just hop back over there and book it in there, make sure you're not double booking anyone. That's perfectly fine. There shouldn't be any issues as far as having 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 tabs open at a time. It happens and it's perfectly okay. Just every now and then you might have to just click that refresh button. But good question. I'm glad you asked that. Now, Haley, you mentioned this one earlier. Go ahead and maybe expand a little bit on this one too.
Yeah, so Redtail has redone our mobile app. It was several months ago now that we've redone it, but we are constantly pushing updates to it as well. So if you use the mobile app more than 6 months ago, it's completely different. Oh gosh, a pandemic time, more than a year ago.
Yep.
Sorry. More than a year ago. Then reinstall it, delete the old app, and install this new one. And you'll be able to access all of your activities on the go. You can now delete them within the app as well. So that's available. You can reschedule them and manage them just as you're out and about. And this app is available on all mobile devices, including your iPads and tablets. Although if you are on a larger screen, you can also just log into the CRM on that mobile device through a browser.
And one thing that is actually really exciting that just came out to the mobile app. So not only is this still, again, really new compared to what it was before, like it is a vast jump, but there's also workflow tasks on there as well now. So that's something that wasn't there even a month ago. So even if you're like, yeah, I tried it once back in May, chances are high if you haven't checked in again in the last couple of months, there are, again, quite a few changes that might just kind of steer you into just using that when you're on the go.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's a feature I wanted to sing from the rooftops when it came out, because that's what we used to hear all the time is, oh, I would use the mobile app, but it doesn't have workflow tasks. Well, now it does. So really exciting stuff.
Yeah. So actually, I'm glad. So Louis just put in here, promise, because I struggled with the app for a while. So yes, if you struggled with the old version, and no judgment, I completely get it. Give it a shot now because it is very user-friendly, comparable to our CRM. Obviously, it's still going to be on a smaller screen. So if you're visually impaired like I am, it might still be a little struggle staring at some smaller font. But adding in those notes, adding in context, just viewing your calendar, this is a really, really good choice for you to look at now. Now, the last tip here before I open it up to some questions comes back into that HTML concept I mentioned earlier. So again, every color code has its own HTML. And unfortunately, there's not a way for us to go in, unless you have everyone's login, which that's a whole other topic. I'm not touching that one. But every single login could have their own different color. If this is something where you want your entire office to have appointments to this color, to lunch meetings to this color, to phone calls as this color, to tasks as this color, that's where you can almost create kind of like a style guide of that HTML color code. So what we see down here, and I know it's a little small here, but it has exactly the code for that particular color. So that way, again, if I want Haley to have that same color, she can just copy and put that into that in there, paste it in, and now we have, again, that same matching color. So I know that is something that quite a few people, that is a huge deal for them, and they've just incorporated that into kind of their new employee onboarding. Hey, set it up to these colors, and then they have it.
So a couple of questions came in And I want to answer them, even though one of them's a little bit not related to the calendar, but it is related to the mobile app. If you set your birthdays as a preference to see on the calendar, do you lose the ability to see them on the home page or the today page? And the answer is no. You can see them both places just fine. So setting your preference to view the birthdays on the calendar does not take away any ability anywhere else.
Right.
And then the second question was on the mobile app. You don't see an option to add notes within the mobile app. Is that on the development roadmap? It is actually an option to add notes in the mobile app. You just have to be on the contact record.
Yep.
So notes have to be attached to a contact record. Unlike activities don't have to have a contact. So go to a specific contact within the mobile app and then you'll see that option.
Exactly. So actually, I'm glad that someone had brought up before we open it up to some questions that I want to ask. As far as like the today page in the calendar, yes, this is going to actually show again any activities we have in here and any workflow tasks, which again, both of these can be reflected in that calendar. But these other features as well, these are more, they live, eat, sleep, breathe outside of a calendar. Because like birthdays, that comes from the actual birthday card itself in the contact record. Client review comes from somewhere else again in that contact record. These again are more of those, hey, they're going to exist here, but they'll also exist on that calendar. So I'm glad someone brought that up because yes, the today page is another place to see it. But if you do a lot of bookings and calendar activities, I recommend just having this as its own tab. Now, I did want to actually ask the question because sometimes I find some really good examples out there. What are some ways that you guys use the calendar that we might not have mentioned that could be really useful to other users? So maybe you have like a, hey, on Thursdays, we block off this amount of time for this. Is there anything out there? And if you have anything like that that you want to pass on those words of wisdom, put it into that chat and we can definitely pass those on, see if there's anything out there. But I do also want to clarify, because there was a question that popped in from Lee, where there's things that are duplicating because of retriever for tail wag. So again, double check to make sure you don't have retriever for tail wag set up on multiple computers, because that does tend to cause those duplicates in there. Now, again, if it's only set up on one it is, I would probably give support a call so they can actually hop onto your actual screen, see what's happening, and can help fix it from there.
So Bobby gave us a tip. We put available appointment time for specific times on the calendar so that everyone knows when they are allowed to set appointments. I hear this all the time, that maybe a new admin or someone who's scheduling, maybe a reception person, schedules appointments outside when the advisor's actually available or willing to do a review, maybe. So that's a great tip, is time blocking when they are allowed to set appointments. That another option to that is using a calendar scheduling tool like Calendly, Time Trade, Schedule Once, one of those, linking it up to Redtail through one of those integrations we talked about, but never send that link to clients, only use it internally. Yeah. And that's where an advisor may be able to set their availability so that it restricts when somebody within your own office can actually schedule for that advisor. That's a popular option as well.
Now, I actually shout out here for Sarah, because this actually could pull in a template as well, where she sets aside 30 minutes on Friday to reorganize the calendar and the clients as well. So taking a look back, it sounds like from the calendar, make sure we're not forgetting anything that's out there. And then if there is anything that we didn't complete, make sure we get those completed early next week. So definitely, if you don't use those time blocks to your advantage, feel free to set that up as a template that you can immediately pop in, maybe 30 minutes at the beginning on Monday or 30 minutes at the end of day Friday. Again, utilize those templates when it comes to these activities. Utilize those time blocks. I know it sounds weird for me to recommend kind of getting away from everything for just a few moments, but that does give you some clarity to make sure you aren't forgetting anything.
Christy gave a great tip. Zoom meetings work great in different colors than appointments. So something I said was, like items, color them together. Maybe color them by the level of preparation that is needed. If there's drive time before, make them blue. If it's a Zoom appointment, maybe make those green, and you don't need the drive time before that activity, but you do need to be camera ready or whatever it is.
So I did see it earlier, and it actually comes into kind of another question we have now, with kind of the whole concept of activities and controlling your calendar with recurring events. So yes, you can set up a recurring activity so that way if it does repeat daily, you could put daily. If it's weekly, you could do weekly, monthly, every day, custom where it's supposed to be, every 4 months, whatever the case is, you can set that up here. Just always know that this repeating is based off of what our actual date here. So if we're now trying to set it so that way it's a Monday, it didn't start that way. So that's why you're not seeing Monday as an option, or vice versa, where it's like, okay, why is it giving me the fourth Thursday of the month? It's again based on that start date. So yes, if you have activities out there, don't feel like you have to save and clone them 300 times if it's supposed to be repeating. Just set up that reoccurrence so that way you have it set up and viewable on your calendar.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.